Okay, think about the forbidden fruit. I bet the first image that pops into your head is a bright, shiny red apple, right? It's one of the most famous images in the world. But what if that whole idea, that iconic image, is actually based on a huge botanical misunderstanding from centuries ago?
We're going to dive into a real biblical mystery here, peeling back all these layers of translation and tradition to figure out what the forbidden fruit might have actually been. And I promise you, the answer is probably not what you're expecting.
The whole puzzle, really, it all comes down to a single word from the original Hebrew text. It's a word we think we know, but it turns out its ancient meaning is, well, it's a lot more interesting than you might think.
That word is tapuach. Now sure, in modern Hebrew today, tapuach means apple, but its literal ancient root, it just means the inflated one. It's a general term for anything that's kind of round and puffed up. Just think about it. A potato in Hebrew is a tapuach adama, literally the inflated fruit of the ground. So the real question is, which inflated fruit was the Torah actually talking about?
So, this sets up our two main suspects in this botanical whodunit. In one corner, we have the apple, the one we all know, the familiar choice. And in the other corner, we have a much more ancient candidate, the etrog, or citron, a really fragrant citrus fruit with deep, deep roots in the Middle East.
All right, let's start with the usual suspect, the apple. I mean, it's the popular choice for sure, but when you start to look a little closer at the botany and the history, some pretty serious problems start to pop up with this theory. For starters, the apples that were actually growing wild in the ancient Middle East, they were nothing like what you find at the grocery store. They were small, they were sour, honestly not very tempting. And here's the real kicker. Apples don't grow true to seed. If you plant a seed from a delicious apple, you'll probably just get a tree that grows tiny, inedible fruit. That's why almost every modern apple you've ever eaten is basically a clone, grafted from one single parent tree to guarantee you get that same delicious fruit. So if the apple is looking a little shaky, what about our second suspect? Let's take a look at the etrog. This was the only citrus fruit that we know was being cultivated back then in the ancient Middle East, and it has a pretty fascinating story all its own.
Unlike a big, hardy apple tree, the wild etrog was an incredibly delicate plant. It almost looked sickly. Its branches were thin, and it was so fragile that for centuries, farmers actually had to graft it onto the roots of stronger lime trees just to keep it alive.
In fact, finding a pure, non-grafted etrog was so incredibly rare that it became the stuff of legend. There's this amazing story about the great sage, the Chazon Ish, who in the 1940s was walking through the hills of Israel, and he found one, a wild, pure etrog tree. And that one single, delicate tree is considered the ancestor of so many of the pure etrogim that we have today. But here's where this botanical debate gets really interesting. It connects to something much, much deeper, a really profound theological idea about the nature of creation itself. See, the biggest clue isn't in botany at all. It's hidden right there in the language of the book of Genesis. When God commands the earth to create plants, the text uses this very specific, almost strange-sounding phrase. God asks for an etz pri ose pri, which translates to a fruit tree that makes fruit. You have to ask, why say it like that? Why not just say, a tree that makes fruit? Isn't that a little redundant? While the sages explain that this specific phrasing reveals God's ideal plan for creation. The original intention was for a world where the tree itself, the physical vessel, the wood, had the exact same taste and essence as the fruit it produced, the spiritual core, a perfect, seamless unity. But that's not what happened. In the very next verse, the Torah tells us the earth brought forth a tree that makes fruit. The word fruit was dropped from the description of the tree. The ideal plan was changed right from the very beginning of creation.
And this separation is fundamental to, well, everything. The tree became the plain, inedible vessel, the physical world, while the fruit became the special, tasty core, the spiritual. It established the world we live in now, a world where we have to do the work to find that spiritual essence that's hidden inside a physical shell.
And this brings us right back to our mystery. If the tree of knowledge was meant to represent that original, perfect state of unity, which one of our suspects, the apple or the etrog, actually fits that description?
And this is where the etrog makes its case, and it's a really strong one. It's one of the only fruits where its wood, that thick, fragrant peel, has the same powerful aroma and the same taste and essence as the fruit inside. The physical vessel and the spiritual core are one. It perfectly embodies that original, divine plan for creation. But hold on, the story doesn't just stop there. There's a verse in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, that uses our mystery word, tapuach, and it opens up a totally different way of thinking about this whole thing.
So the verse says, the breath of the beloved is like the fragrance of tapuachim. That's the plural of tapuach. In this context, the fruit is clearly a metaphor for spiritual perfection. So, what does that tell us about our two suspects?
Well, it turns out both fruits fit the metaphor beautifully, but in completely different ways. The etrog has this incredibly powerful scent all by itself, which can represent a single individual who has achieved perfect unity, like a messianic ideal. But an apple blossom? The scent is very gentle. To get a powerful fragrance, you need an entire orchard, which symbolizes the combined spiritual strength of a whole community.
So you see, the real takeaway here isn't about botany. It's about two different models for what spiritual perfection even looks like. The etrog represents the ideal of the perfected, unified individual. The apple orchard represents the ideal of a perfected community, where our collective strength creates something beautiful. The real question isn't which fruit is correct, it's which model of meaning speaks to you.
And really, that's the question this whole ancient mystery leaves us with today. When you seek meaning in your own life, do you look for that perfect, singular unity of the etrog? Or do you find it in the collective, fragrant strength of the apple orchard? It's a question not just about a piece of fruit, but about the very nature of our spiritual lives.